I discovered my grandpa was the reason behind my childhood trauma, so I ruined his reputation and left him completely alone. Months later, he called me dying and desperate for forgiveness, and I knew exactly what to tell him. While my grandma was dying of cancer, I watched my granddad go through hell. Every night I could hear him crying in the kitchen, while vigorously typing on his laptop looking for any solution to help cure her. Most of the time I would pretend not to hear him because whenever I helped he would get angry. You know the type of anger men get when they're embarrassed. But other times, it was unbearable. I couldn't even stop myself from going down and at least making him a cup of tea or something. For context, I've lived with my grandparents ever since I turned 14. Not because my parents were crazy abusive or anything, they just never really got me, I guess. But my grandparents? They were like the couple from the movie Up. Every night when my grandma wasn't home, my grandpa was the type of man to flip through the scrapbook he made for her on Valentine's Day during high school. Honestly, they're the only reason I believe in true love. So one day, as I watched my grandma's hand wither away for the last time while her heart stopped beating, I also had to watch a greater tragedy. My granddad's heartbreak. It got so bad that he even started having a heart attack. That's when things got real. He ended up being in hospital for weeks due to dozens of health complications the nurses uncovered. I still remember being beside him while the anesthesia wore off. At first, he would speak gibberish about how much he loved my grandma, or how much he appreciates life. But once, after a particularly high dosage, his tone shifted. "I miss the things we used to do together," he said, with a faraway look in his eye. "Grandpa, we can do them," I'd always say, trying to reassure him. Usually that was enough to soothe him, but this time was different. "You're too young for that stuff, honey. Let's keep you out of jail." He then laughed like it was an inside joke that I was in on. I turned super red thinking he was talking about sex or something, but then I got this awful gut feeling that made my entire body itch all over. So when my grandpa fell back asleep, I did what any loving granddaughter would do in that situation. I went through his phone. At first there was nothing too crazy in his camera roll, just photos of him and my grandma, me as a baby, the works. But that's when I saw a hidden folder. Like, what the F is an old man doing with a hidden folder setup? Luckily, he wasn't smart enough to make the password anything other than my grandma's birthday. But as soon as I unlocked it, I regretted it. Because right there was a photo of this storage unit in the outskirts of our town. I didn't even recognize the street name. Well, I was curious, and I have a driver's license, so I put the location of it into my phone before heading out. Looking back, I was so heartbroken from the sight of my granddad in pain that I forgot to even acknowledge my own, and I guess that grief forced its way out of me through an intense obsession of finding information. The drive there was so long that I managed to rewatch all of Madeline Argy's YouTube videos in one go. The storage unit was unlocked, probably because he hadn't expected a teenage psycho to come snooping around. Inside, everything was covered with a thick layer of dust. It smelled like rotting meat. I even had to cover my mouth with the sleeve of my hoodie. Before opening the storage door, I took a deep breath and braced myself. But there was no amount of bracing that could have adequately prepared me for what I saw next. On the surface, it seemed to just be a row of boxes all stacked against each other. But then I opened the one at the top. Inside were dozens of photos of me as a child, ones I didn't even know existed. The first batch was tame, just me in a bikini by the pool, me eating what was probably my first lollipop. Nothing crazy. But then I kept flipping through, and I swear I felt my soul leave my body. Photos of me sleeping, completely unclothed. Photos of me in my cot while men I didn't recognize stood over me touching their, well, bile rose in my throat. My breathing was so shallow I swear it felt like I had just run a marathon or something. I don't even know why I kept looking, but I did. And by the time I had gotten to the third box, I was looking at photos of me crying and locked in a dark room. And not just a basement or anything, no. The walls were lined with toys. By this point, tears were streaming down my face and I was rocking back and forth on the floor. All the photos were all taken from before I had turned 3, which I guess explained why I didn't remember any of it. But I always thought I had a normal childhood. My family practically prided themselves on being the white picket fence dream. I tried to convince myself it wasn't me, that this unit didn't belong to my granddad. But that was practically impossible because on the back of all the photographs was my name alongside dates and my age, all of which lined up. As I sat down and stared at the ceiling, I thought about it. All the creepy jokes my dad made, all the money we had that couldn't have come from my parents' jobs, why I don't have any memory of life before turning 10. I grabbed a few photos and stuffed them in my pocket. I needed evidence. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped half of them. I didn't know what to do next. Call the police? Tell someone? My brain was totally fried. I ended up just sitting in my car for like an hour staring at nothing. The drive home was a blur. I don't even remember turning on the radio or stopping at lights. I just remember pulling into our driveway and feeling like I was gonna throw up again. My granddad was still in the hospital, so I had the house to myself. I went straight to my room and hid the photos under my mattress. That night I couldn't sleep at all. I kept thinking about those men in the photos. Were they friends of my granddad? My dad? Both? I felt so gross and violated. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those pictures. I ended up taking 3 showers before morning. The hospital called around 8 a.m. My granddad was being discharged tomorrow. I had to pick him up. I almost said no, but then realized that would seem suspicious. I needed to act normal while I figured out what to do. I spent the whole day cleaning the house trying to keep busy. I scrubbed the kitchen floor until my knees hurt. I organized my closet 3 times. Anything to stop thinking about what I'd found. But my mind kept going back to it. Why would my granddad keep those photos? What else didn't I know? That night I had nightmares about being trapped in a dark room with toys on the walls. I woke up screaming at 3 a.m. drenched in sweat. I grabbed my laptop and started researching childhood trauma and memory repression. Apparently it's common for kids to block out traumatic memories, especially from before age 5. That explained a lot. The next morning I drove to the hospital to pick up my granddad. The whole way there, my stomach was in knots. How was I supposed to look at him now? How was I supposed to act normal? I practiced my fake smile in the rearview mirror at every red light. When I got to his room, he was sitting on the edge of the bed in his regular clothes. The nurses had helped him get dressed. He looked so frail and old. For a second I almost forgot what I knew. Almost. "There's my girl," he said, smiling at me. "Ready to take your old granddad home?" I nodded and helped him into the wheelchair. The nurse went over his medication schedule with me. I pretended to listen while screaming inside my head. The whole time I couldn't stop staring at his hands. Had those hands taken those photos? The thought made me want to run away. The drive home was awkward. He kept trying to make small talk, asking about school and my friends. I gave short answers and blamed my mood on being tired. When we got home, I helped him to his favorite chair and made him tea, just like I always did. "You're a good girl," he said, patting my hand. I had to force myself not to flinch. Don't know what I'd do without you. That night I lay in bed planning my next move. I needed more evidence, something concrete that couldn't be explained away. I decided to plant my old iPhone in the living room bookshelf set to record audio overnight. Maybe he talked in his sleep. Maybe he made phone calls when he thought I was asleep. For the next 3 days, I pretended everything was normal. I made his meals, helped him take his meds, and watched TV with him, all while feeling like I was going to explode. Each night I checked the recordings. Nothing useful, just him snoring or getting water from the kitchen. But on the 4th night, I hit pay dirt. Around 2 a.m. he was mumbling in his sleep. Most of it was gibberish, but one name came through clearly. Douglas. He said it 3 times. Who the hell was Douglas? I'd never heard him mention anyone by that name. The next morning, while he was in the shower, I checked his phone again. This time I looked through his contacts, and there it was. Douglas. Saved under golf buddy. My granddad had never played golf a day in his life. I waited until my granddad took his afternoon nap before calling Douglas's number. number. My hands were shaking so bad I had to redial twice. Finally, I heard ringing. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. Hello? A man's voice answered. He sounded old, maybe around my granddad's age. I froze. I hadn't actually planned what to say, so I just blurted out, "Who is this?" There was a long pause. "Who's calling?" he asked, his voice suddenly tense. "I found your number in my granddad's phone," I said, trying to sound casual. The line went dead. He hung up on me. I tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. I left no message. For the next 2 days, I kept watching my granddad, looking for any sign that Douglas had told him about my call, but he acted completely normal. He watched his usual game shows, complained about his meds, and asked me to make his favorite meatloaf for dinner. I was starting to think maybe I was being paranoid. Then on Friday morning, I went out to drive to school and found all 4 of my car tires slashed. Not just flat, completely destroyed with deep cuts. This wasn't some random vandalism. This was a message. I called the school and told them I had car trouble. Then I called a tow truck and had my car taken to the local garage. The mechanic, Russell, whistled when he saw the damage. "Someone really had it out for your tires," he said, examining the cuts. "This was done with a sharp knife, deliberately. You passed someone off?" I shook my head and told him I had no idea who would do this. The repair bill came to almost $600, nearly all the money I'd saved from my part-time job at the mall. I paid it and took an Uber home, my mind racing the whole time. When I got back, my granddad was sitting in the kitchen eating toast. He looked up when I came in. "Car trouble?" he asked innocently, too innocently. "Yeah," I said, watching his face carefully. "Someone slashed my tires last night." He frowned and shook his head. "What is wrong with people these days? You file a police report?" I told him no. I just got them fixed. He nodded and went back to his toast, but I swear I saw the tiniest smile at the corner of his mouth. He knew. Somehow, he knew I was digging. That weekend, I decided to try a different angle. I remembered my mom once mentioning that I had a lot of ear infections as a baby. Maybe there would be something in my medical records that didn't add up. I drove to my childhood pediatrician's office doctor, Marilyn's practice. The receptionist, an older woman named Victoria, greeted me with a smile. I told her I needed copies of my medical records for college health forms. She seemed suspicious at first, but eventually agreed to help me. "Let me see what we have," she said, typing on her computer. "Name and date of birth?" I gave her the information and waited while she searched the database. Her forehead wrinkled as she stared at the screen. "That's odd," she muttered. "We have your records from age 3 onward, but nothing before that. Usually we have birth records, vaccination schedules, all that stuff." My heart started racing. "Is that normal? For records to be missing?" Victoria shrugged. "Not normal, but not impossible. Records get lost in transfers sometimes. Your parents might have taken you to a different doctor when you were very young." I thanked her and left with the partial records. Another piece of the puzzle. Why were there no medical records from before I was 3? The same age as in those horrible photos. When I got home, my granddad was watching TV in the living room. I decided to take a risk. I needed to see his reaction. "Hey, Granddad," I said casually. I was doing some spring cleaning in the garage and found a box of old photos. There were some weird ones of me as a baby. "Do you know anything about them?" His whole body tensed. Just for a second, but I caught it. Then he smiled. Too quickly. "What kind of photos, honey?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Just strange ones. Me in places I don't remember, with people I don't recognize." He waved his hand dismissively. "Oh, you must be confused. Probably photos of some other kid. Your grandma was always taking pictures of the neighbors' children too." I nodded and dropped the subject. But that night, I couldn't sleep. His reaction told me everything I needed to know. He was lying. The next morning, I woke up to find my laptop wouldn't turn on. The screen stayed black no matter what I tried. I took it to the computer repair shop in the mall where I worked. Bobby, the tech guy, examined it and gave me bad news. "Your hard drive is completely fried," he said. "Like physically damaged. This wasn't a software issue or a virus. Something actually damaged the components." I felt sick. All my schoolwork was on there, and my backup hard drive, which I kept in my desk drawer, was missing when I checked. Someone had been in my room. Someone had destroyed my computer and taken my backup. That night, I confronted my granddad directly. I showed him the folder I'd found on his phone with the storage unit photo. "What is this?" I demanded. "Why do you have pictures of a storage unit hidden on your phone?" He looked at me with such sadness that for a moment I almost believed him. "Sweetie, I think you're having some kind of episode. Maybe the stress of losing your grandma or something else. There's no hidden folder on my phone." He showed me his phone. The folder was gone, completely wiped. He continued looking concerned, telling me that maybe I should see someone, that grief can do strange things to people's minds, that I'd always had such a wild imagination. For a moment, I actually doubted myself. Was I making this all up? Was the grief driving me crazy? But then I remembered the slashed tires, the missing hard drive, the medical records. Too many coincidences. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Around 2 a.m., I got up to get some water. As I passed my bed, something caught my eye, a corner of paper sticking out from under my mattress. I lifted the mattress and found a photo, one of the photos from the storage unit. A picture of me as a toddler, crying in that room with the toys on the walls. I hadn't put it there. I'd hidden the photos I took in a different spot. This was new. Someone had placed it there while I was sleeping. He was toying with me, gaslighting me, trying to make me think I was crazy while simultaneously letting me know he was watching me. The message was clear. "I see you. I know what you're doing, and I can get to you anytime." I realized my phone and laptop weren't safe. He could be monitoring them somehow. So I went old school. I bought a paper journal from the dollar store and started documenting everything. I hid it inside a tampon box in my bathroom cabinet, the one place I figured an old man wouldn't look. I also bought disposable cameras instead of using my phone. I took pictures of my room before leaving each day, then checked the photos after developing them to see if anything had been moved. Small things were always different. A book slightly out of place. My hairbrush moved from one side of the dresser to the other. He was searching my room regularly. About a week after finding the storage unit, I got an unexpected call. It was my grandma's sister, my Aunt Teresa. I hadn't seen her in years. She said she saw the memorial post I made for Grandma on Facebook and wanted to meet up. We arranged to meet at a diner the next town over. I didn't tell my granddad where I was going, just that I was meeting a friend for lunch. Aunt Teresa was already there when I arrived, sitting in a booth by the window. She looked a lot like my grandma, just thinner and with shorter hair. "You've grown so much," she said, hugging me. "Last time I saw you, you were just a little thing." We ordered coffee and made small talk for a while. Then she leaned forward, her face serious. "I need to ask you something," she said quietly. "How are things with your granddad? And your parents?" Something in her tone made me pause. "Fine, I guess." "Why?" She sighed and stirred her coffee. "Your grandma and I didn't speak for almost 20 years. Did you know that?" I shook my head. No one had ever mentioned any family drama. "I cut contact with all of them back when you were very little," she continued. "There was something I saw at a family barbecue. Your dad took you off somewhere. You were crying. When you came back, you were just silent, different. I told your grandma what I saw, but she didn't believe me. Said I was making trouble. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear over it. What did you see exactly?" She shook her head. "I don't know for sure, but it wasn't right. The way they passed you around among their friends, the way they'd take you to another room when you got fussy. I tried to report it, but no one believed me. I was the troublemaker of the family, you see, the one with mental problems. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I found something," I whispered. "Photos, in a storage unit." Her face went pale. "Oh God." I told her everything. The storage unit, the photos, the slashed tires, the mind games. She listened without interrupting, tears streaming down her face. I knew it, she kept saying. I knew something was wrong. She offered to help me, said I could stay with her if I needed to get away. I was tempted, but I wasn't done yet. I needed more evidence. Something concrete that couldn't be denied or explained away. The next day, Aunt Teresa and I went back to the storage unit together. But when we got there, my heart sank. The unit was empty, completely cleaned out. Not a single box remained, just bare concrete floor and walls. He must have found out I discovered it, I said, my voice echoing in the empty space. He cleared everything out. We looked around carefully, and I noticed something in the corner, a single photograph lying on the floor. I picked it up. It was a picture of me and Aunt Teresa at the diner yesterday, our faces clearly visible through the window. I showed it to Aunt Teresa, who gasped. Someone was watching us, she whispered. They must have followed us from the diner and left this as a warning. Aunt Teresa wanted to go to the police right away, but I refused. What evidence did we have? One photo of us at a diner? My granddad had already cleaned out the storage unit, deleted the folder from his phone. He'd been careful to cover his tracks, and I had a feeling that if we went to the police, things would get much worse before they got better. Instead, I decided to keep digging. I started visiting my granddad's friends, all under false pretenses. I'd say I was collecting stories about my grandma for a memorial book, or helping granddad organize his address book. Old people love to talk, and they rarely suspect a teenage girl of investigating them. I met Eugene, my granddad's neighbor, who always brought over homemade bread. Donald, who played cards with granddad on Thursdays. Noah, who ran the local hardware store. Each time, I'd casually ask if they knew anyone named Douglas. Most said no, but Donald's face twitched when I mentioned the name. Douglas who? He asked, too casually. Just Douglas, I said. Granddad mentions him sometimes. Donald changed the subject quickly after that, but as I was leaving, I noticed a photo on his mantle. A group of men at what looked like a charity golf tournament. My granddad was there, and so was Donald, and several other older men I didn't recognize. I asked if I could take a photo of it for my grandma's memorial book. Donald hesitated, but agreed. I snapped a picture with my phone and thanked him. That night, I studied the photo carefully. There were 8 men total, all around my granddad's age. I recognized my granddad, Donald, and Eugene. The others were strangers to me, but on the back of the frame, someone had written, Annual Charity Event, 2010, and listed all their names. One of them was Douglas Thompson. I started researching each man on the list. Most had regular jobs. Eugene was a retired teacher. Donald owned a small accounting firm. But Douglas Thompson owned a real estate company that specialized in foreclosures and rental properties. He would have had access to dozens of empty houses and apartments over the years. I dug deeper into his company records, which were public, and that's when I found it. A cabin rental agreement from 20 years ago. It was rented in my name, my actual name, when I was just 2 years old, and my granddad's signature was on the rental form as the responsible adult. I showed Aunt Teresa what I'd found. She was horrified, but not surprised. She decided enough was enough and confronted my granddad directly. I begged her not to, but she insisted. I was in the kitchen when she arrived. My granddad seemed surprised to see her, but invited her in politely enough. They sat in the living room while I pretended to do homework at the kitchen table, listening to every word. At first, they made awkward small talk. Then Aunt Teresa brought up the cabin rental. Why would you rent a cabin in a 2-year-old's name, Walter? She asked bluntly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. My granddad's voice turned cold, hard. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, but I think you should leave. I know what you did, she pressed on. What all of you did. To her, to other children probably. You're not family anymore, he said, his voice eerily calm. You never were. Just a jealous, crazy woman making up stories. Get out of my house before I call the police. Aunt Teresa left in tears. I pretended I hadn't heard anything, but 3 days later she called me in a panic. Someone had broken into her apartment while she was at work. Nothing was stolen, but the place was trashed. Her clothes were cut up, furniture overturned, walls damaged, a message. I was running out of safe places to keep evidence, so I asked my friend Kelly if I could use her school locker to store some stuff. She agreed without asking questions. I put the remaining photos, the journal, and printouts of everything I'd found in a folder and hid it in her locker. I didn't write down which locker I used in my journal, keeping that detail only in my head. But the next day, the school called me to the office. The principal, Mrs. Blake, looked concerned. There was a break-in last night, she explained. Someone forced open several lockers in the east hallway, including your friend Kelly's. My blood ran cold. Was anything taken? We're not sure. The security cameras were disabled. Do you know if Kelly kept anything valuable in there? I shook my head numbly. I was shocked, but realized my granddad must have followed me to school and seen which locker I'd used. I went home that day feeling defeated. Everything I collected kept disappearing. Every move I made, he was one step ahead. But I wasn't giving up. I just needed a new strategy. I ripped up my journal, burned the pages in the backyard fire pit, and started over. But this time, I filled it with fake information, false leads, made up evidence locations. I left it hidden where he would easily find it. I also started spreading rumors around town. I told different people different stories. I told Kelly I found evidence at the old abandoned factory. I told my coworker Andrea I hid photos at the library. I printed flyers about a victim support group meeting at a local motel and accidentally left one where my granddad would see it. The bait worked. 2 nights later, I followed my granddad when he snuck out after midnight. He drove to the Sunset Motel on the edge of town, the location I'd put on the flyer. I parked across the street and watched as he pounded on the door of room 118, the room number I'd listed. I recorded everything on my phone. He was yelling about shutting this down and keeping your mouth shut. But when the door opened, it wasn't a victim or a support group, just a confused tourist who'd rented the room for the night. The tourist called the front desk, who called the police. My granddad was arrested for disorderly conduct and disturbing the peace. Nothing major, but enough to get him taken to the station. While he was being processed, they found a flash drive in his pocket. Standard procedure. They inventory everything you have on you when arrested. The officer, a young guy named Officer Jordan, recognized my last name when booking my granddad. You related to this guy? He asked when I came to the station after getting the call. I nodded. He's my grandfather. I'm his caretaker. Officer Jordan seemed concerned but professional. We found a flash drive on him during processing. Given the circumstances of his arrest, we'll need to examine it as part of our investigation. I can't share details yet, but if we find anything relevant to you, we'll follow proper procedures to notify you. I thanked him and bailed my granddad out. He was silent the whole ride home. Not angry, not defensive, just silent, watching me. It was the scariest he'd ever been. 2 days later, Officer Jordan called me. He explained that they had obtained a warrant to examine the flash drive due to suspicious circumstances. They found disturbing content that might be relevant to me, and he asked me to come to the station to discuss it formally. When I arrived, he explained that they had found numerous inappropriate images of children, including what appeared to be me as a young child. He asked if I would be willing to make a statement, explaining that they would need to follow proper protocols for this type of investigation. I agreed, and spent hours giving a detailed statement about everything I discovered. Officer Jordan assured me they would handle the investigation carefully and professionally, explaining each step of the process. I didn't go to the police station to file a report. I didn't need to. I had a better idea. I made copies of everything. Then I sent it all to everyone who had ever loved my grandma. Old neighbors, church friends, family members, everyone. I included a simple note. This is what he did while you weren't looking. Within days, my granddad's life fell apart. His friends stopped coming by. The church asked him not to attend services anymore. Family members blocked his calls. He was completely ostracized. The men from the photo started disappearing from town too. Douglas Thompson suddenly retired and moved to Florida. Eugene sold his house practically overnight. Donald's wife left him after 40 years of marriage. One of them, a man named Kevin Walsh, got struck up outside a bar by some random guy who called him a sick pervert. I never found out how that guy knew. Word travels fast in small towns. My granddad never confronted me about any of it. He knew it was me, of course. But what could he say? The evidence spoke for itself. He just withdrew more and more each day, barely leaving his room. I moved in with Aunt Teresa permanently. We sold the house, using the money to pay for therapy for me. Real therapy, with a specialist in childhood trauma. It's been hard, but I'm working through it. Last week, I visited my grandma's grave for the first time since she died. I left flowers, told her I missed her, and I left one final thing there. A photo of myself, smiling, holding the scrapbook my granddad had made for her all those years ago. On the last page, I taped a note that read, "I don't forgive you, but I won." I took the photo I'd left at my grandma's grave and tucked it into my jacket pocket. The wind was picking up, and dark clouds rolled in from the east. Perfect weather for what I was feeling inside. I drove back to Aunt Teresa's place in silence, not even bothering with the radio. When I got there, Aunt Teresa was sitting at the kitchen table with a strange look on her face. She had her phone in her hand and kept tapping it nervously against the table. "What's wrong?" I asked, dropping my keys on the counter. She looked up at me with wide eyes. "Your granddad called. He wants to see you." My stomach dropped to my feet. I hadn't spoken to him in weeks, not since everything blew up. "What did you tell him?" I said I'd ask you, but it was your decision. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You don't have to go if you don't want to." I paced around the kitchen for a while thinking it over. Part of me wanted to tell him to go to hell, but another part needed closure, needed to look him in the eye one last time. "I'll go," I finally said, "but not alone." Aunt Teresa nodded. "I'll come with you." We arranged to meet him at a coffee shop downtown the next day. Neutral territory with plenty of witnesses around. I barely slept that night, going over and over what I might say to him. By morning, I had dark circles under my eyes and a knot in my stomach the size of a baseball. The coffee shop was busy when we arrived. I spotted my granddad immediately, hunched over in a corner booth. He looked terrible, like he'd aged 10 years in a few weeks. His clothes hung loose on his frame, and his eyes were sunken. I slid into the booth across from him while Aunt Teresa stood nearby, pretending to look at the menu board but keeping an eye on us. My granddad looked up, and for a second I saw something like relief in his eyes. "You came," he said simply. I nodded but didn't speak. Let him do the talking. "I'm dying," he said without preamble. "Cancer. Same as your grandma. Doctor says I've got a few months at most." I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not pity, not even surprise, just nothing. "Is that supposed to make me feel sorry for you?" He shook his head slowly. "Number, I just wanted you to know, and I wanted to give you this." He slid a small key across the table. "Safety deposit box at First National. Everything's in there. Names, dates, recordings, all of it." I stared at the key without touching it. "Why would you keep evidence against yourself?" "Insurance," he said with a bitter smile. "To keep the others in line. We all had dirt on each other. That's how it worked." My skin crawled. I finally picked up the key with 2 fingers, like it might burn me. "Why give this to me now?" He looked down at his coffee cup. "Because I'm the last one. Douglas overdosed last week. Didn't you hear? They're saying it was accidental, but..." He trailed off with a shrug. I hadn't heard. "I've been trying to avoid anything related to those men. They're all gone now," he continued. "Dead, moved away, or locked up in nursing homes with dementia. I'm the last one who remembers everything, and soon I'll be gone too." "You think that makes it better?" I asked, my voice rising. "You think I care if you're sorry now?" He looked me straight in the eye for the first time. "I'm not sorry. Not the way you want me to be. I'm too old to change who I am, but I am sorry about what it did to you. Finding out, I mean." I felt sick. I stood up so fast I knocked over my untouched coffee. "You're sorry I found out? Not sorry you did it? Go to hell." I started to leave, but he grabbed my wrist. "Not hard, just enough to make me stop." "There's money too," he said quickly. "In the box. Enough to pay for college, therapy, whatever you need. Take it. It's the least I owe you." I yanked my arm away. "I don't want your money. It's not just my money," he said. "It's theirs too. All of them. We all put in. Think of it as reparations." I looked at him with disgust. "You think you can buy forgiveness?" He shook his head. "Number, but I can give you a future. That's all." I walked out without another word, Aunt Teresa right behind me. In the car, I finally broke down, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. She held me until the worst of it passed. "What are you going to do about the key?" she asked when I'd calmed down. I looked at the small piece of metal in my palm. "I'm going to see what's in that box." The next day, Aunt Teresa and I went to the bank together. The manager took us to a private room with a safety deposit box. When he left, I took a deep breath and opened it. Inside were exactly what my granddad had promised. USB drives, labeled by year, paper files with names and addresses, and stacks of cash, more money than I'd ever seen in one place. At least $50,000, maybe more. But there was something else too. A sealed envelope with my name on it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with an address in a town about an hour away. Nothing else, just the address. "What do you think it is?" Aunt Teresa asked, looking over my shoulder. "I don't know," I said, "but I'm going to find out." We drove there that afternoon. The address led us to a small house with a well-kept yard. An older woman answered the door when we knocked. She looked to be in her 60s, with kind eyes and silver hair. "Can I help you?" she asked, looking confused. I hesitated, suddenly unsure what to say. My name is..." "Oh my God," she interrupted, her hand flying to her mouth. "It's you. You look just like your mother." My heart started racing. "You knew my mother?" The woman nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I'm Grace. I was her foster mother for a while. Please, come in." We followed her inside to a cozy living room. Photos covered every surface. She picked up one and handed it to me. A young woman holding a baby. "That's your mother," she said softly. "And that's you." I stared at the photo in shock. The woman looked like me, but happier, more carefree than my mother had ever been. "I don't understand," I said. "My mother never mentioned being in foster care." Grace sighed heavily. She probably didn't remember. She was only with me for about 6 months when she was 16. She'd run away from her parents, your grandparents, after years of abuse. She was pregnant with you and terrified. My hands started shaking. "Abuse? Your grandfather was not a good man," Grace said carefully, "and your grandmother looked the other way. Your mother wanted to break the cycle. She was determined to protect you." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "What happened?" "She had you here, in this house. You were the most beautiful baby." Grace smiled at the memory. "For 6 months, everything was good. She was going to finish school, get a job. We had a plan. Then one day her parents showed up, said they'd changed, wanted to make amends. They seemed so sincere. I knew where this was going. She believed them. Grace nodded sadly. She went back with them, taking you. I begged her not to, but she wanted so badly to believe they'd changed. I never saw her again. I tried to check on her, but they moved away. I looked for years, but they moved across the country, I said numbly. Changed their names slightly. Started over where nobody knew them. Aunt Teresa, who had been silent until now, spoke up. How did you know her parents? Before she came to you, I mean. Grace's face darkened. I was a social worker back then. There had been reports about their home for years, but nothing ever stuck. Your grandfather was well connected in town. Police, judges, other influential men. They protected each other. The pieces were falling into place. My mother hadn't been a willing participant. She'd been a victim who got pulled back in, who maybe thought she could protect me from the inside. Did my mother ever contact you again? I asked. Grace shook her head. But about a month ago, I got a letter from your grandfather. Just your name and a recent photo. Nothing else. I tried to process this. He wanted me to find you, to learn the truth. I think so, Grace said. Maybe in his own way, he was trying to make something right. I wasn't ready to give him that much credit. Or maybe he just wanted to hurt my mother one last time by exposing her secrets. We stayed for hours, looking through Grace's photos and hearing stories about my mother as a teenager. It was like discovering a whole different person than the quiet, anxious woman I'd known. When we finally left, Grace hugged me tight. You're welcome here anytime. This was supposed to be your home. On the drive back, I was quiet, turning everything over in my mind. Aunt Teresa let me think, only speaking when we were almost home. What are you going to do now? She asked gently. I looked at the safety deposit key in my hand. I'm going to talk to my parents. I hadn't spoken to them since everything came out. They'd called a few times, left messages saying they wanted to explain. I'd ignored them all, but now I needed answers. I called them that night. The conversation was brief. I told them I knew everything and that I was coming over tomorrow. My father started to protest, but my mother cut him off. We'll be here, she said quietly. The next day, I drove to their house alone. Aunt Teresa offered to come, but this was something I needed to do by myself. My parents were waiting in the living room when I arrived. They looked terrible, like they hadn't slept in weeks. I sat across from them and placed the safety deposit key on the coffee table between us. I know about Grace, I said without preamble. I know you were in foster care. I know what they did to you. My mother's face crumpled. She started crying silently. My father just stared at the floor. Why did you go back to them? I asked. Why would you bring me into that? I thought I could protect you, she whispered. I thought if I was there, they wouldn't, that I could stop them. Did you? I demanded. Did you protect me? She looked up, her eyes hollow. Not enough. Never enough. I tried, but they always found ways. Drugging me, sending me on errands. By the time I realized I couldn't stop it, we were trapped. They had photos, videos. They said they'd release them, ruin our lives, and I was weak. I'm so sorry. I wanted to hate her. Part of me still did. But looking at her now, I could see she'd been as much a victim as I was. Maybe more, because she remembered everything. What about you? I turned to my father. Were you part of it? He finally looked up. Remember, I met your mother after she came back. I didn't know anything until after we were married. By then it was too late. They had their hooks in too deep. I didn't know if I believed him. I wasn't sure I ever would. I'm not here for apologies, I said. I'm here because I need to know if there were others, other kids. They exchanged a glance. My mother nodded slowly. Yes. Over the years. Not many, but yes. I pushed the key toward them. There are names and evidence in that safety deposit box. Enough to put people away if any of them are still alive. I want you to take it to the police. All of it. My father looked startled. But that would mean I know what it means. I cut him off. You'll have to admit what you knew and didn't stop. You might go to jail, but it's the only way I'll ever consider having either of you in my life again. I stood up to leave. My mother grabbed my hand. What about you? What will you do? I gently pulled away. I'm going to college in the fall. Psychology. I want to help kids who've been through what I went through. I was using the money from the safety deposit box, though I didn't tell them that. It felt right somehow. Taking their dirty money and using it to heal the damage they'd caused. 3 days later, my parents walked into the police station with everything from the safety deposit box. The investigation is still ongoing. Some of the men are dead, but not all. There will be trials, eventually. I don't know if I'll testify. That's a decision for future me. My granddad died 2 weeks after our coffee shop meeting. I didn't go to the funeral. Instead, I visited my grandma's grave again and left a different note with her scrapbook. This one said, "The truth is out. It's over now." I'm still staying with Aunt Teresa while I finish high school. I still have nightmares sometimes, but they're getting less frequent. My therapist says that's progress. I'm starting to believe her. Last week I got my college acceptance letter. When I told Grace, she invited me over for dinner to celebrate. She showed me a room in her house, the room that would have been mine if things had gone differently. She said it's still mine whenever I want it. I don't know what my future holds. I don't know if I'll ever fully heal from what happened. But for the first time in my life, I'm making my own choices, writing my own story, and that feels like winning.